No, we've never had a crossword ever in terms of shoot. There was one scene you wanted in that I had to cut.
No, it's a great scene, and it made it, for my money. It's still, if you get to read the script, we'll be selling that soon enough, I'm sure. It adds to the kind of brothers, because unfortunately in the edit, the two brothers story does get
it gets lost.
It gets,
well, not lost, but it gets demoted.
Yes.
That's a bit of a shame because they were sort of working well together, you know what I mean? If it was
Yeah.
really brother, like in the bunk above me, I'd want to get...
Again, it's
there's parts of that scene, hopefully, I don't know if they're going to be in the
they'll
DVD.
be in the DVD, aye.
They are beautiful. That was
Yeah.
A-Boy's first day on set, and I had tears in my eyes. This was performances that were sublime.
Yeah.
But it was a whole story that got lost, so they're scenes that had to get cut.
So it's like anything in a cutting room. You have to make choices, and the great thing with DVD is the audience can decide when you made the right choice or the wrong choice. The truth is, already the film's on the 2 hour mark. I mean, if I'd kept in everything I would like to have kept in, it would have been 2.5, and it would have been too long. It would have been bye-bye movie.
Sure, yeah.
You would have had it's not as good an experience.
It's all the marketing bollocks.
Well, I watched the 2.5 hour long version, you know, because I'd cut it, and realised it's like, nah, it's too long. And I don't mean too long that an audience can't take it. The drama just goes, and there's many would argue this is too long, and they could have a point, but I just couldn't find a way of cutting it any shorter than it is.
The banter between the kids was excellent, and
Aye.
the classroom scenes were sort of scarily real as well.
Yeah.
Like getting belted and
Aye.
mind going like that, just to want to teach.
Aye, totally. The more they hit their thighs when you've done that, the better. Aye. I've done that one many times, man. Many times.
Cheers, thanks.
No problem.
Thank you. Gentlemen there?
When did you realise when you were making the film that you were on to a winner? When did it sort of come across that this
Oh, I never felt that, I'll be honest. No, I didn't. No, I'll be absolutely honest. The first time they saw what they call a rough assembly, when your editor puts everything together before you start cutting it. And I just wanted to blow my brains out. It was an absolute pile of bollocks. It was 3.5 hours long. It was a mess. So no, I've never recovered for that first assembly. You never do. As I say, any filmmaker that says, "Oh yes, I knew very early on," I'm sorry, I wouldn't trust them as far as I can throw them, you know, or her, for that matter. You know, it's just you never get that comfortable, because as Lenny said there, that those scenes there. I mean, Lenny isn't aware, but that's like a knife to my heart. You know, I had to cut these scenes. Do you know what I mean? He's not in that room, and I'm cut. No, I mean, the bottom line is, I know that I had to cut stuff that in an ideal world I'd have kept. But the thing that happens when you cut a film is it gets a voice of its own. It starts off as your wee baby that you nurture and breastfeed and blah blah blah. Then a film ends up on a stage. It's like an adolescent. It won't do nothing that you want it to do, and that's the most amazing thing about when you're cutting a film, is it ends up with a voice all of its own, and it tells you, I don't want this scene anymore. You're like, no, you're one of the best scenes in it, and the film sort of says, no, you know you don't need me no more. I need to go. And they do, and they walk, and it kills you. Music's another one. There's scenes you've spent a lot of money to get orchestras or whatever, and you put music on it, and the film knocks it back. And I swear, there's no other way to describe it. The film goes, no, don't want your music. Stick your music up your arse. You know what? You've cost me 56 grand. I need you to like this music. And the scene says no. And then you try and change the music. The scene still says no, don't want your music. Then another scene says, no, I'll take it. I'll. Honestly, it drives you nuts. It's an amazing experience. So you never sit back and go, oh, yeah. That's when I knew it worked. You find out about 10 years later, when people, you know, if they're nice enough and they say, oh, I remember that. Then you think, well, it could have been that bad, you know.
Thank you. Lady there?
I loved the film. I love the humour of it. I love the language. I think the humour fits simply because
It was a combination of two. The one was, horrifying in the sense that it still goes on. The other was equally horrifying, the idea, we got a whole generation that maintain they never done that, you know. I mean, I read a story when I didn't do a lot of research for it, to be honest. But I remember in the Mitchell, I read a story about two kids who were watching a fight in Edinburgh, and it was a big boy fighting another lad. These kids were 9 and 10, and a fight between a 13 or 14-year-old, and they cheered on the wrong lad, as in they cheered the one that got beat, and they were all stood in a circle going fight, and one lad won over the other. the lad that won took exception to those two kids who had been jeering on his opponent, chased after the two kids and beat one of them to death with a brick on the pavement. And it happened in 1893. And that really, really hit me. That story could easily have been in the Sunday Mail tomorrow, and we'd all been horrified, and we'd all want the parents locked away. And
I think that's the next question, if you don't mind, is how much of the film is generating more debate today?
or tons.
Because it's absolutely today's issue.
Or tons, and hopefully in a good way. A lot of the police in the violent reduction unit's been in touch with me and stuff. There's been the various debate amongst the chattering classes, if you like, but there's been debate also wider afield about this tribalism has been going on for hundreds upon hundreds of years. This is not a new phenomenon, which is another reason why I want to set it the 70s, as in this is not a modern day phenomena. This is something that has been going on for hundreds of years, and we really have to start looking at just now the debate is, as always, that it's the lock them up versus the so-called namby-pamby liberal brigade, and I think the lock them up lot will always play to the gallery and say, look, I say we just throw away the key. And when you see some of the acts that have gone on, you'd be like, yeah, and I'll be the one to throw that key away. Bottom line is, it doesn't work. It's not worked in 400 years. Why is it going to work in the next 5 years? You know.
I think your film, for me, opens up. It isn't black and white.
No.
There's so many social issues there, education,
Oh, completely.
literacy, everything.
Completely. The minute that the worst types of films of that genre, the gang genre, if they don't even bring in, I'm not trying to prescribe how they should write their films, but if they don't even bring in any of the outer orbit around that particular planet, if you like, then it's grossly irresponsible. That is gratuitous. Because to just suggest that these kids have just come out of nowhere and they just happen to be really evil and really violent that's offensive. I find that offensive. They asked me to do a film just before we started shooting the Edge called Harry Brown, and I couldn't do it. And it was good money. They were asked that, and I got to beat up Michael Caine for 3 days. And I said, no, I can't do this, because this is fascistic nonsense. This is vigilantism. This is all, you are simply presenting kids who are so evil. Of course you're going to shoot them in the back of the head. The fact that they bear no resemblance other than their voices and their costume, they have no basis in reality. They're just evil kids, which then allows you to go, well, let's shoot them in the back of the head, cinematically speaking. But the truth is, if you were to even just look at a little bit of their lives, I'm not saying that by looking at their lives it explains this, I'm not saying any of that, but that movie, its primary thrust of that film was absolutely, totally, unashamedly fascist. It was, give the old people guns, that will sort the problem out. And it's like, please. I mean, the bloodbaths around the old folks' homes in Glasgow would just be, it'd make Libya look like Disneyland. It would be like, give pensioners guns. Well, there's the answer. Every pensioner runs out. I don't want them. Poof. It's insane.
What I thought was interesting as well, Peter, was that there was no kind of spark, there was no tipping point. It just kind of began to wash over him over time, and because I've seen so many Hollywood films where that happens, and all hell breaks loose. Come on, it's more than that.
It is, and it doesn't work that way. It's like all of us when we're teenagers. Things change so quickly, and you don't always know why. And sometimes the kid themselves don't know why. I mean, why do you see the photographs of the wee kid? He's at primary 7. It's the wee pretty face, and then they show you the other photo of him lying in a street somewhere, junked up his head. He's OD'd on bad heroin. All in the space of 2 years. What made him take to the heroin? We all like to simplify things, particularly in regards to our kids. Because we'd all like to understand. But if one oversimplifies, then obviously you defeat the purpose. You may as well not even examine the issue in the first place.
Any more questions before I round off? There you go.
Just on that subject, the scene that I really loved, I loved all the films, the scene that I really loved was the scene where you think he's going to stab his dad, and he ends up cutting him.
Aye.
And I think that presents exactly what you're saying. For me, that says parent.
Yeah, big time.
Is that a big part of the message that you're
Oh, big time. I mean, the one thing I realised very early on in writing it was you can't say, and I'm an old-fashioned kind of Marxist, and society is to blame for a great deal. The one thing you can't say in regards to this particular issue, you can't just turn around and say society is to blame. It's such a cocktail of family life, one's own personality, one's peers, education. I mean, there's so many different influences, but one of them is definitely role models.
Absolutely.
You know,
if
if you're in an environment as they were in that time and still is to this day, really, if all you're seeing around you is violent men, be it police, be it priests, be it teachers, be it whatever, I'm not saying you will then automatically take to violence yourself, but if you are predisposed for whatever reasons that may be, then you're far more likely to go down that road than you would down other avenues.
Absolutely, and the whole, I was very surprised at how much of an emphasis was in education. I wasn't expecting.
Aye.
But of course it makes sense.
Yeah.
And we were just speaking about it, and it really should be something that every teacher should watch in teacher training.
All right.
It should be, because,
Yeah.
because that's the little bit that's the gap, you know, in
Oh, aye.
terms of helping, not all teachers, but teachers to
No.
understand that actually what they do in the classroom and how they tag on the same as their siblings, for example.
Yeah.
is such a
Oh, it's
big
massive.
difference in how
It is massive.
life
Yeah. What a lot of teachers forget, I mean, I never taught in schools, I taught in community centres and prisons and the like, but obviously I've got a lot of school teacher mates, and like all of us, you get into a job after 10, 15 years, you get a little bit, you know, jaded, shall we say, and they do oftentimes tend to forget that to that little 12-year-old, you're still Mr. So-and-so, and that Mr. So-and-so stays with that 12-year-old till that 12-year-old's 62. Everybody remembers Mr. So-and-so, or Miss So-and-so, or Mrs. So-and-so. And I think teachers, understandably, get a bit tired, if you like, and a bit done in with the whole, you know, what goes on in their working lives. But they do have a massive influence.
For them to reflect on their own.
Aye. No, I agree. I think they should all watch it. I would agree with that. I'll not argue against that one. Or they should buy the pirate. Or no, buy the pirate. Actually, teachers know a name, they'll all buy the pirates.
Just to finish off, if we can go down the line, starting with Lenny, what did you learn on this film? What are you taking away from it?
What did you learn?
No, that you can get great performances from youngsters if you give them enough space. And I mean, we tried that in Magdalen to a certain extent. We got great performances in Magdalen, don't get me wrong. They were even surpassed in this one, and they were given slightly more space, and it's a great way of working. So I suppose I learned that it's a great way to work.
Excellent. Peter?
No, I got along with Lenny on that one. It was the seeing how much the kids changed in the course of the shoot, how they. And it's unfair to my adult actors who were also, I think, brilliant in the film, because they had to kind of come down a bit, if you like, to let the kids shine, as it were. And so it was a kind of thankless task for the adults. But in terms of what Lenny says there about for youngsters, just get, by giving them enough space and enough confidence, then you can get that.
Yeah. Graeme?
Yeah.
Again, I think for me, just you couldn't really work with a better cast and crew. So the thing I took away was just the pleasure the kids got from it as well. And as you say, every day, the kids literally ran onto the set. They were so excited, and they all gelled over the kind of course. The first couple of weeks of them were just kind of, just really natural. There was never any kind of hassle or any bad vibe. It just seemed to be a really nice, easy flow. And I think just even seeing the kids over the last few weeks since the film coming out, I mean, they're just through the roof, excitement about it, and it's a huge thing for them all, you know. And they're all, it's really nice. The other thing I think is really nice is a whole kind of circle of friends now that have built up out with it. It's like the kind of the huge cast, all most of them still keep in touch. It's a great big circle, and it's like a social thing almost as well, you know. So it's affected their lives. I mean, that them, if they don't do them a film, they've done Peter's film, and that's them. It's fantastic, and that's great. That's what it's the most pleasure I got. Plus taking the pictures.
Excellent. Can you put your hands together and thank our
Thank you.